Hello again. This is Pupu Noob and doing another game dev interview. And this time with me is the developer of Clang, Tom. How are you, Tom?
Hey, I'm pretty good. And you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for asking. And you're a one-man studio, right?
Yes. I don't do music and sound design, but yes, I developed Clang single-handedly, apart from that.
Right. You worked with a EDM composer, right? Blind.
Yes,
Right.
an American-based composer going by the artist name Blind, yeah.
Yeah. So let's let's start with what Clang is. What's your elevator pitch for Clang?
So, Clang is a rhythm platformer where you defeat enemies by reflecting their attacks while you're keeping your groove going.
Right.
And the mission statement of the game is to blend the best of both worlds, of both rhythm games and action games.
So, what's a compelling reason for somebody to play Clang?
So if you've ever played a rhythm game where you felt it was fun to tap buttons, but you felt always something was missing, like there's no really immersion to this,
Mm-hmm.
then that would also definitely be a reason to check out Clang. On the other side, if you really liked action games and they're a lot of fun to play, but the music just is sort of there just to enhance the power fantasy.
Right.
Like you don't really have an incentive to sync up to it or feel the rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
That's also an incentive to check out Clang because that provides that.
And this is your first game, right?
Yes,
Uh,
I've worked on as a student and done minor things on other very small game projects before, but this was the first genuine attempt. Yeah.
right. And how did you get started making games?
Well, it depends on how far back I'm gonna go, but I remember playing a bit around with RPG Maker when I was 10,
Right.
which essentially was just a Final Fantasy VI modding tool.
Yeah.
You can really make much with it. And then I just kind of developed myself as an artist rather than a game designer. Focused mostly on just drawing, learning a little bit of 3D stuff. And once I hit around the 20-year mark, I discovered Construct 2, which was the tool I ended up using for Clang.
Right.
And I just realized how accessible it can be to make games these days. And I also realized just how smoothly the pipeline for Construct could be integrated with the way I do pre-rendered art with 3D and After Effects and stuff. And it was hey, yeah, I can totally make a game with this. I'm gonna do it.
You decided to make Clang after a game jam in 2013 or something like that, right?
Yes.
What
That
what
was
made
where
you did you start did you actually make a prototype to in that game jam?
No, not directly, no. But the thing I took away from that game jam was just how easy it could be to make games with Construct 2, primarily.
Right.
And I just, through the prototype we made, I just saw, whoa, that idea I have in my mind, since I had already had the game idea for Clang for years. But I just realized, oh wow, I can actually make it with this tool. And then I also started seeing for instance, I think I saw the prototype trailer for 140, which is this other rhythm game.
Yeah.
And then I saw Bit Trip Runner, which it was very far from the game I was making, but it was still okay, these alternative rhythm-esque games are becoming a thing now. So if I don't act very soon and create the game, it's going to be irrelevant shortly.
Ah. And how did you come up with the idea to combine rhythm and action platformer? That's pretty unique.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit in the pitch, but it was that I really like playing Dance Dance Revolution, and just tapping the buttons felt good, but what am I, apart from just the music part, getting out of this? I'm not being immersed into a world, I'm not being told a story, things like that. And then I really liked action games like God of War, Devil May Cry,
Mm-hmm.
etc. That brought all that other good stuff. But there, the music was, again, it was there to enhance the power fantasy. It wasn't in a movie where they have the luxury of timing everything perfectly up to every frame that happens.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to emulate that a little bit. How would this play out in game form?
Apart from Bit Trip Runner, were there any other games that inspired you? Specifically
It
for
was
Clang?
it was actually mostly the action games. parts that actually inspired Clang. Like actually like on the music rhythm games part of things, it was like pretty much only Dance Revolution that like actually inspired me. Bit Trip and 140 especially actually just pressured me into making it because I kind of saw where the tide was going.
Mm.
But it was like Devil May Cry, DMC, God of War, those kind of games that like actually like made me wanna do that rhythm thing primarily.
Right. And during development, how long did it take you to make Clang?
About 3 years, very close to 3.
And what was a typical like work day for you during development?
Well, it was getting up a little late in the day since I'm not a morning guy,
Right.
and then just like prepping out. Okay, what are the problems I need to solve today, and in what time frame do I need to solve it? And I usually worked for like 12 to 13 hours a day, like 7 days a week, and I just kept going like that throughout the entire process. And often there would also come roadblocks in the way, like, oh, you have to plan for an event you're going to, like for instance PAX Australia or GDC or South by Southwest or E3, that kind of thing. That also takes away a lot of your attention.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost felt like being a general in a war where like you just simply like have to like order like resources to certain tasks. Fighting several wars at the same time, like the marketing war, the production war, the business war, etc.
So you mentioned you use Construct 2, which is a pretty popular engine that is popular because it doesn't need any coding. And you're somebody that doesn't have programming experience, right?
Yeah, I actually first started looking into some C# programming like last week. I don't know any programming really, and like my background is purely from a design and art perspective.
Right.
So Construct definitely enabled me to make the game.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I was to make a game again, I would definitely have another very different approach to Construct, because like those tools, they aren't really made for big games. They're made more for like prototyping.
Right. Oh.
So
yeah.
So it was definitely a very tough road despite not requiring programming.
How was using Construct 2? Was it a very tough learning experience, or did you pick it up very quickly? Was it beginner friendly?
It's super beginner friendly, which is why I stuck with it.
Right.
It's like I actually had the first prototype of Clang up and playable in like 2 weeks or something. It was super quick, and like the first impression of that engine was amazing. And then as time goes on and you just realize like the bigger the game gets, the slower it becomes in every aspect. Like it just can't handle asset heavy games. And that's like where you kind of felt, oh shit, I was duped. I'm a little tricked. But by that point it was too late to stop, so you just like had to like just keep hustling.
Right.
And by the end it was practically impossible to make new content, but hell, the game shipped. So
how was it limiting? Like, how did it force you to change any of your initial ideas or anything like that?
Well, I did really go in with the mindset of like embracing the restrictions. So like whenever I had like a crazy idea that very quickly turned out like, nah, the engine isn't really made for it, then I scrapped it very quickly, and rather decide to like, okay, with the tools available, how can I make something fun? So in that sense, it didn't hold me back too much, but it was like just I wanted to push the density of art assets a lot more than I did. And primarily the reason for that was just that like every asset in the game is in memory in one way or another at almost any given time. So I just really had to hold back on the amount of art assets in the game, because like it just took too much memory as the game went by, and the iteration process became slower because every asset needed to be loaded in every time you test for a change, if anything worked. So yeah, it became very difficult to work with in the long run, for sure.
Okay. Do you recommend people using it?
If you're gonna first or just gonna prototype your idea, absolutely. If you're gonna make like ambitious games with it, I'm not so sure I would recommend it. At the very least, keep it to like white boxing and like don't implement your art before you're way into development and you essentially made every level in the game, because then you can keep that iteration process still smooth. But like the mistake I did was that I went too early in and just like, I'm just gonna crank all the art assets and get in all the animations and like get the game feel up.
Right.
Which it's an approach I still like to do, but it's just like Construct wasn't made for it. So that's something you definitely have to keep in mind if you're gonna use it.
Would you have used?
It's just.
Would you have used something different?
Well, like
looking back on it,
I don't think I could have actually shipped if I used a different tool back then, since like Unity wasn't nearly as beginner friendly as it was back then. Right. Unreal 4 wasn't out, and the blueprint system for Unreal 4 didn't exist, or at least it wasn't publicly available. Well, there's always GameMaker, I guess, but I haven't used it too much. But my impression is that it struggles with all the same problems that Construct do.
Right.
So it probably wouldn't help. Yeah, I probably would have used Construct too, but if I were to like go back in time and like tell my my younger self something like hold back on the art, it's fine, don't do that thing yet, you can wait, then the game probably would have gone a lot better.
So like, what were some cool ideas from the initial design document that you couldn't implement, or was there any big changes?
Yeah, one of the ideas I remember was that it was initially supposed to be a bit more Metroidvania-esque, that you would like explore big levels.
Right.
And like one of the mechanics would be that like you would eventually unlock the ability to like walk on rhythm water. As in like sine waveforms and stuff, but like it became very apparent that okay, this isn't really gonna work.
Was there any issue of like the game mechanics that you want to implement getting in the way of each other?
Well, it was definitely a balancing act, since like when it's a rhythm game that is also very multitasking based, like it can very quickly become overwhelming or poorly communicated. And like for instance, one of the biggest design stuff that like I made it look intuitive and easy by the end, but like the thing that took the longest to nail down was just what do you do with a down hit?
Okay.
Because at first that was another turret that was like literally in the ground shooting up, and it just looked really weird.
Right.
And then it like transitioned to, maybe every other turret is firing at you at once. But that wasn't intuitive, since people thought they had to press left, up, and right at the same time instead of just down. So that felt wrong. And then it just ended up as like this sort of like super move that had no function. After a lot of experimentation, I finally landed it on that. You increase the multiplier every time you hit it.
Right.
So that was a surprisingly heavy process. And also another thing was that since the game runs in widescreen, it's like the left and the right is super easy to see. The upper one is not too bad, since the character was like he's slightly more down.
Right.
He's not centered. But therefore the down hit was very hard to see a lot of times. So I had to like make,
because they have a small window.
Very small window, yeah. So I had to make I'd like make a dynamic camera system that like would move the camera little, pan it around, like lead the eye towards the direction you're supposed to parry. It's very subtle, but like if you look for it, you can definitely see it.
That's smart. You went to like some expos and conventions to show off Clang, right?
Yeah, a good amount of them.
How did the feedback change the game? Was it mostly, did you implement new mechanics because of it, or was it mostly like balancing and tweaking already existing stuff?
Yeah, it was mostly balancing and just ensuring that it wasn't too hard.
Right.
Since the also a huge struggle throughout the entire development was just difficulty balancing. Like the initial prototype was insanely hard. Like the third level was almost, or maybe the seventh level was harder than the final boss in the game now. Yeah, it was insane. I just completely overestimated people's ability to multitask. But
Were you able to beat it? Were you like having no issues with it?
yeah, for me it wasn't hard at all.
Okay.
Which is was a little delusioning since
Right.
like I knew that like what was felt just right for me was like the hardest game of all time for most people.
Right.
So like when I inevitably even ended up making a casual mode for Clang, like it's so easy for me that it's painful to play.
Ah. Yeah.
But like I know like I have to do it because otherwise people won't enjoy it.
Right. So I've I've done quite a few of these interviews, and I notice a lot of indie game developers or new studios and stuff are coming out of Europe. You're based in Norway, are you?
Yes.
Is there like some kind of support structure in Norway for indie developers or something like that, or maybe just in general for the games industry?
Yeah, it's like that. A lot of European countries like they invest in like what's the right word for it? Like potential for like new businesses and stuff,
Right.
or like new industries rather.
Ah.
Since like in Norway we currently have the oil, which is starting to do poorly with the circumstances of the world.
Right.
So we are like investing. Okay, what can we do? And we see, hey, Sweden is doing very very good with video games, and people love video games, and there's a lot of demand for like there are a lot of small Norwegian groups that like want to build an industry, but it just needs the funds.
Right.
So Clang was, for instance, actually government funded.
Ah.
Whereas in like, for instance, the US, they don't really have that.
Yeah.
Like, and which is probably why you see a lot of, especially American indies, like cater more towards like very easy to sell concepts, like a nostalgia trip of like, hey, we're
Right.
like
16-bit
making,
stuff.
yeah, like making this thing that's very easy to sell and get up on a Kickstarter.
Right.
Whereas like, for instance, in Norway, like since we are already funded, we can like do very crazy projects that may not be as commercially viable, at least yet. So like, for instance, Among the Sleep, which was like this horror game where you play a 2-year-old that was, when it all came down to it, more, I guess it was a horror game for teens.
Oh, was it from Norway?
Like, yeah, that was Norwegian.
Oh, okay.
Actually, they work in the same office as I do.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, and there's also a game that launched like yesterday on Steam called Manual Samuel.
I saw that. It looks cool.
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
the look of
and
it.
that is like a very crazy, risky concept that like I have faith it's gonna do well, but it's definitely it's not like a guaranteed like oh
Right.
my god everyone needs to play this because it reminds me of this thing I played when I was 6 years old.
Right.
Right. So yeah, we're definitely risk takers at least over here.
That's cool. And you also have a publisher, right? Yochanan
Yes.
Games. What are they part of the government or something like that, or they're like
Or
a separate
well,
business?
No, well, they as well have been funded a bit from the government, but like about half the crew is actually American.
Ah, okay.
But a lot of the people that like for instance on the business front had like a background working for like government sectors and stuff
Right.
in Norway.
And so you already got funding from the government. So what were the like contributions from Snow Cannon Games? What were they doing on their side?
Yeah, it was mostly marketing.
Right.
Since like it came to a point where I just realized, okay, like I'm stretched too thin. Like I'm since like marketing well takes an insane amount of work. Like it's way more than a full-time job, at least for
Yeah.
for one person.
It's like a full-time Twitter, Facebook thing.
Yeah, and also like reaching out to the right people,
Yeah.
like doing that like kind of behind the table stuff,
Yeah.
things like that, and business meetings. Oh, there's just so much stuff. And then I'm also again just making a game by your own is also a massive undertaking.
Right.
So you just realize this is impossible. Like, just no way. So that was the primary thing I reached out to them for. They also provided like QA testing,
Oh, okay.
like made sure that they got like the right people to play it and provide feedbacks. Like for instance, James Portnow, which is a very well-known game designer and like mentor figure.
Right.
He showed the games to like his connections, and like and in return I got like super brutal honest feedback from professionals that like really kept me grounded.
Was they surprising to you?
Some of it was,
Yeah, right.
but it was mostly just like, oh, my fears are totally true.
Right.
This one thing I feared wasn't good enough definitely isn't good enough, and I need to focus on that and that and that. But it definitely helped like prioritizing everything to like get everything out. Since when you work alone, it's so easy to like get blinded by your own work.
Lose track of things.
You lose track of things and like, just completely wrong priorities. It's like you think everyone's gonna flag you for not having this certain thing, and then you don't realize that your first level is broken or something, or that no one understands how to even play it, right?
Right.
And that definitely makes it easier to set priorities straight, just having more sets of eyes on it. And they're also helping out with the porting to consoles. Since while I could make Clang with no programming skills for PC,
right,
that won't hold for PlayStation.
For porting, yeah, right.
Yeah. No, it definitely needs professional programming expertise to get that done.
Right. Okay, so we've reached the 20-minute mark. You have to go, so I won't keep you any longer. Just a couple more last questions.
Sure.
Have you played Crypt of the Necrodancer?
I get that one a lot. Yes, I have played it, but
What do you think about it?
I think it's a really good game. I will admit though, I am not a super fan of how one mistake can kill you and send you.
Right.
Yeah, like it can send you back like 20 minutes easily.
Yeah.
But then again, like that's a roguelike trait.
Yeah, it's a roguelike thing.
Yeah. Though I first did discover that game about halfway through development, and I was like, no, that throne I was wanting to sit on about like with the alternative rhythm game, someone came ahead of me, which was my fear when I started making it.
Right.
But again, it is a very good game, and it's ultimately also a very different game from Clang. So.
And it proves like a different style rhythm game sells.
Yes. And all power to them. Like I even met some of the devs, like they're really cool people. And the composer for Clang, he actually made some tracks for the Xbox One version of the game.
Ah.
Yeah, like they're also really good.
Right.
What more about Necrodancer? I suppose that was my opinion of it.
Right. And so now that the game is out, is there anything that you have done differently? Not just about Construct 2. Is there anything else that you would have done differently?
Now that I've seen, for instance, how the game was received and things, like I probably would have pushed more for it to have even more playtesting.
Right.
Since like even while the feedback we've been getting have mostly been very positive, the criticism we do get, however, like it all really spawns from like these last 25% of the game, which was like, of course, the least tested. So like I would probably push even more for playtesting. I would also like probably try and build a community sooner. Since I did that, I first started my Twitter account like 1.5 years into development, way too late. But by that point, I should have already been doing that for years and already had a small following, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely lost a bit due to that. And, like, it's still a bit early to really make a postmortem, since, like, there's still so many things in the air that I don't know if I did right or wrong yet. So, yeah, it's still a bit early to say. I probably will make a, like, very extensive postmortem at one point.
Cool. And are you porting it only to the PS4 or also to the PS Vita, kind of like a cross-play, cross-save kind of thing?
Well, our first priority is, of course, just the current-gen consoles, so PS4 and Xbone.
Right.
And, well, Clang would be perfect on the Vita, so we should at least look at it, especially if we also want to get the game out in Japan, for instance.
Right. They're big on handhelds there.
Yeah, they're very big on handhelds, and Clang is already proven to have appeal there. Like, it actually got 8.8 from IGN Japan, for instance.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, it's just like, you need to get it out there.
Right.
So, but yeah, the thing with Vita though is that it's a much weaker platform than the current gen consoles, and we're just gonna have to see how can we optimize the game, or is it even gonna be worth it?
Right. Okay, so one more question for you. What's next?
Still in the process of figuring that out. Like I'm currently just doing R&D for like learning the new tech for the new projects I want to make, and I just need to settle on the idea. Like what I did mention in the AMA, the Reddit AMA, was that
Right.
there was like a Kickstarter going right now, which like in the first day just blew up, and like they made their goal in like a few hours almost, and that was like almost exactly the game I wanted to make. I was like, no,
Oh,
someone else is already doing it, so I need to go back to the drawing board and figuring out something else.
do you mind telling me what's the name of that game?
Uh, I think I want to keep it to myself because I don't want to
Right.
like claim any ownership, or that they ripped me off or something like that.
Right.
Since they totally deserve what they made, I'm not gonna hold that against them.
Okay. That's it. End of the interview. Thank you very much. Where can people find you?
Well, Clang is out on Steam, so you
Right.
can find it there. My Twitter handle is Tinimations, and I also go by that name on Facebook. So that's probably the best way to reach out to me.
Right. I'll have all the relevant links at the description below. I'll also have the page for Blind's Bandcamp.
Yes.
I will point it to Clang's the OST so that because you can buy it not only on Steam, you can also buy it off his Bandcamp page. So yes.
Yeah, it's also on iTunes and Spotify
Right.
and SoundCloud. Yeah, it's on
Pretty
most
much
of the
everywhere.
biggest channels.
All the big
Yes.
all the big places. So yeah, thank you very much, Tom, for spending time with me.
No problem. It was fun. Thank you.
Right. And thank you very much to the people listening and watching this, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.